Alright, so since I haven't actually made a video on Andor since the show has come out, I want to preface this video by saying that I am loving Andor right now. I think it is one of the best live-action Star Wars shows yet. In fact, I think it might even be better than Mandalorian, but that's a conversation for a different time. And since we've reached the halfway point of the series, I think it is a good time to address something that I think a lot of people are wondering. Will Palpatine make an appearance in this show? Now, of course, it has been revealed by the creator of the show, Tony Gilroy, that this show is very much trying to stay away from fan service and stray more towards the side of telling a good story. Now, obviously this is a great thing. This is a very important thing to telling a good story. Now, that being said, I do think there is a very decent chance that Palpatine could show up in this show and still help serve the story and not just serve as fan service. So, let's jump into it. Alright, so the first piece of evidence that could suggest that Palpatine is in this show is, if I'm not mistaken, there was a leak a little while back, before any trailers for the show or anything, that suggested that Mas Amedda would actually be in this show. Mas Amedda is, if you don't know, is Palpatine's sort of right-hand man in the Senate. And there was a leak that he was going to be in this show, and of course if he's in this show, then so could Palpatine. And while it's probably a very brief appearance, it does give some validity or some possibility to the idea of Palpatine being in the Andor series. Now, the second reason why I believe that Palpatine could appear in the show, and why I think Palpatine could actually help serve the story in this show, is the fact that this show, Andor, is heavily focusing on the politics of the Senate under the Imperial rule, which is very interesting and obviously something that we don't get to see very much because we don't get to see the Senate really at all, and barely any of Coruscant, in the original trilogy, except for like the special editions, because, well, it wasn't really a thing yet when the original trilogy came out. So obviously we're not getting to see, now we're getting to see a lot of, the Senate and the politics after the prequels, which I think is a very interesting thing to explore. And I think bringing Palpatine into the mix could be a very fascinating thing to do. Now, obviously, at the time of this show, 5 years before A New Hope, it's very clear that the Senate is not what it used to be. When we see Mon Mothma have her speech in the Senate building at the end of episode 6, there is hardly anyone in the Senate chambers, and people who are there really have no interest in what she's saying at all. And so basically, there's a shown lack of interest in the Senate, and that is, of course, true to Palpatine too, who is not there because he could care less about some random senator having some speech on some random small-scale issue that really he could care less about. Now, that does obviously affect the possibility of him actually showing up in the Senate, but I do think there is still a possibility of him showing up because of how heavily this show focuses on the political side of the Empire during the original trilogy. Now, regardless of this show or other shows, I would love to see more of Palpatine during the original trilogy time, seeing his life in Coruscant and in the Senate and all of that after the time of the prequels, because obviously we know that he's spending out his days in his, Chancellor's office and the Senate chambers and all this stuff, but we don't really get to see any of that during the time of the original trilogy, and I think seeing more Coruscant during the original trilogy and getting to put Palpatine in the mix of that is a fascinating idea, and I really hope that we get to see more of it, either in this show or in the future, whatever really benefits it the most. But I am very grateful that we're getting to see more Coruscant just in general in this show during the time of the original trilogy. So I do think that there is some validity to the possibility of Palpatine returning for this show, but I also think that there is some evidence that suggests that maybe he won't show up. So, who knows? But I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. Do you think Palpatine will show up in this show? Do you want him to show up in this show? What do you guys think of these theories? Did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you all very soon. May the Force be with you.